The air in the Old Bailey courtroom is thick, stale. A smell of old wood, damp wool, and human sweat hangs like a pall. It is April 3rd, 1895. The buzz of 1,000 whispered conversations falls to a dead hush as the door opens. He enters not as a prisoner, but as a plaintiff. Oscar Wilde, the most famous wit in London, a man who treats life as a work of art. He wears a fashionable coat, a boutonniere. He carries a silver-topped cane. But his face, usually a mask of amused detachment, is pale. His eyes, ringed with shadows, scan the packed gallery. Among the staring faces, he sees friends. He sees enemies. And he sees young, beautiful Lord Alfred Douglas, Bosie, the source of all this glorious, ruinous trouble. This is not the climax. It is the beginning of the end. Wilde is here to sue Bosie's father, the Marquess of Queensberry, for criminal libel. The Marquess left a card at Wilde's club. Its handwritten accusation is not spoken aloud in court, but its words scorch the oxygen from the room, for Oscar Wilde, posing as a sodomite. A misspelled, public ruin. The clerk calls the court to order. Wilde takes the stand. The room leans in. This is not merely a trial. It is a collision of two worlds, one of art, beauty, and secret love, the other of duty, scandal, and the brutal law of the land. Every word here will be weaponized. Every bon mot could become a noose. 2 years earlier, the scent of hothouse lilies and cigar smoke, the sound of champagne corks popping and cascading laughter. London's West End is Wilde's kingdom. His play Lady Windermere's fan is the talk of the town. He is a giant, a celebrated author, playwright, and critic. His philosophy of art for art's sake and his dazzling, paradoxical wit are quoted in every drawing room. He is married to Constance, a gentle, loving woman, and they have 2 young sons. The facade is impeccable, a beautiful piece of Victorian craftsmanship. But in the shadows of this golden life, another world pulses. Private dining rooms at the Café Royal. Silk-lined apartments in Mayfair. The company of young, often working-class men, grooms, valets, clerks, who are paid for their time and their discretion. And then there is Bosie, Lord Alfred Douglas, 20 years Wilde's junior, son of the volatile and dangerous Marquess of Queensberry. Bosie is beautiful, poetically gifted, petulant, and utterly reckless. He and Wilde fall into a tumultuous, all-consuming obsession. Their letters are extravagant, poetic, and dangerous. Bosie writes, "I am the love that dares not speak its name." Wilde will later call it that beautiful, coloured, musical life. Queensberry, a man famed for inventing the rules of modern boxing, is a brutal pragmatist. He despises the relationship, seeing Wilde as a corrupting older predator. He stalks them. He sends threatening letters. He confronts Wilde in his own home. The tension builds, a slow, terrible pressure. Wilde tries to placate, to avoid scandal. But Bosie, hating his father, eggs Wilde on. He wants a fight. He writes a poisonous poem titled Two Loves, ending with a line about the love that dares not speak its name. He leaves copies for his father to find. The war is declared. Then, the card. The misspelled, public accusation left at the Albemarle Club. For Wilde, it is a line in the sand. To ignore it is to admit guilt. His friends, including the great dramatist George Bernard Shaw, beg him to let it go, to flee to Paris. But Bosie, and perhaps Wilde's own pride, demands a suit. Wilde, confident in his linguistic supremacy, believes he can talk his way out of anything. He instructs his solicitor. He will prosecute the Marquess for libel. To win, he must prove the libel is false. He must, in effect, prove he is not posing as a sodomite. The trap, baited by Queensberry, is sprung by Wilde himself. The libel trial begins. Queensberry's defence, led by the formidable Edward Carson, a razor-sharp Irish barrister who once attended university with Wilde, is simple. The libel is true. He will prove it. The courtroom becomes a theatre of cruelty. Carson's attack is meticulous. He first dissects Wilde's published works, The Picture of Dorian Gray and 2 magazines of philosophy. He reads passages about the love of younger men, about corrupted innocence. His voice is a cold, Ulster blade. "Listen, Mr. Wilde," he says, holding up a magazine. "I have never admired any action of my life. The only people I would care to be with now are artists and people who have suffered, those who know what beauty is and those who know what sorrow is." He pauses, lets the words hang. Would that describe a sodomite? Wilde, on the stand, tries to wield his wit as a shield. He is charming, dismissive. When asked if he ever adored a young man, he replies, "I have never given adoration to anybody except myself." The gallery titters. But Carson is not laughing. He is steering Wilde towards a cliff. Then, the shift. Carson moves from literature to life. He begins to name names. Alfred Wood, Edward Shelley, Fred Atkins. A parade of young men from the shadows of Wilde's world is summoned. Carson describes gifts, engraved cigarette cases, monogrammed silver, lavish meals, trips to Paris. He implies a sordid economy of money for secret vice. Wilde's confident replies grow strained. The air in the room changes. The intellectual duel becomes a grim inquest. The climax of the trial comes with the reading of a private letter Wilde wrote to Bosie, one of the many prose poems of love. Carson prepares to read it aloud. Wilde's lawyer objects, calling it beautiful and poetical. The judge allows it. Carson's voice, stripped of all poetry, recites the extravagant words, "My own boy." It is a marvel that those red rose-leaf lips of yours should be made no less for the madness of music and song than for the madness of kissing. Your slim gilt soul walks between passion and poetry. The silence in the courtroom is absolute, horrified. In Victorian England, such a letter between men is not beautiful. It is a signed confession. Wilde, sensing the tide, tries to explain it as art. It is a letter, he says, written in answer to a poem of Lord Alfred's. Carson pounces. A poem of Lord Alfred Douglas's which described what? Wilde, cornered, gives the answer that will echo through history. The love, he says, quietly, that dares not speak its name. Carson asks him to explain what that phrase means. For a moment, Wilde finds his eloquence, his dignity. He speaks of the deep, spiritual affection of an older for a younger man, as in Plato, Michelangelo, and Shakespeare. It is beautiful, it is fine, it is the noblest form of affection, he says. The world mocks at it, and sometimes puts one in the pillory for it. It is a magnificent, tragic speech, but it is a speech to the wrong jury. In this legal arena, it is a death knell. Queensberry's team has a list of names, dates, hotels. Witnesses are waiting. Wilde's lawyer, seeing the abyss, advises him to drop the suit. Wilde agrees. The libel prosecution collapses. The verdict is swift. Queensberry is found not guilty, and his accusation is declared to be true in substance and in fact. The consequence is immediate. As Wilde leaves the court, a free man for mere moments longer, a detective is waiting. The evidence gathered for Queensberry's defense is now handed to the Director of Public Prosecutions. A warrant for Oscar Wilde's arrest, on the charge of committing acts of gross indecency with other male persons, is being drawn up. The first act is over. The real trial is about to begin. The slam of the carriage door is a sound Oscar Wilde will hear in his bones for the rest of his life. It is not the elegant click of a hansom cab. It is the heavy, final thud of a police van. The scents of leather and cologne are gone, replaced by the reek of cheap disinfectant and unwashed bodies. The bustling streets of London, once his stage, now pass by the small, barred window, a taunting panorama of a life receding. He is taken to Bow Street Magistrates' Court, a place of stark procedure, stripped of the theatrical grandeur of the Old Bailey. The hearing is a blur of formal voices. He is charged. He is denied bail. His few remaining friends work frantically in the background, but the public mood has turned, ferociously. Newspapers that once praised his genius now spew vitriol. Crowds gather outside the court, their faces a grotesque gallery of fury and glee. "Oscar, where's your boy?" They jeer. The love that dared not speak its name is now being shouted from the gutter presses. He is transported to Holloway Prison. The gates close. Here, the sensory shock is absolute. The clang of iron doors. The grating of heavy keys. The coarse, scratchy feel of the prison uniform against his skin. The endless, echoing silence of the solitary cell, broken only by the tread of the warder's boots. They take his name. He becomes Prisoner C 3.3. They take his beautiful, flowing hair, shearing it close to the scalp. The man of art is systematically dismantled. He writes to Constance, a letter full of shame and fractured pride. "I am so sorry for you," he writes. "All this to me is a horror." While Wilde sits in the crushing silence of Holloway, London prepares its spectacle. The Crown versus Oscar Wilde. The state now shoulders the burden of proof Queensberry had so devastatingly laid out. The trial is set for late April. The atmosphere is not of justice, but of a public execution. Newspapers sell out. The public gallery is packed with society figures, some in sympathy, most in morbid curiosity. The air is electric with prurient anticipation. The prosecution, led by Charles Gill, is methodical and brutal. He calls the young men. One by one, they take the stand. Their testimonies are halting, ashamed, sometimes defiant. They speak of dinners at Kettner's and the Café Royal, of gifts of money and clothes, of trips to the Savoy Hotel, to Paris, to Wilde's rented rooms in St. James's Place. The details are mundane, which makes them more damning. A silver cigarette case, a walking stick, a meal of lobster and champagne. Each item is catalogued, not as a gift, but as payment. Wilde's defence, led by the eminent Sir Edward Clarke, tries to frame the relationships as patronly, artistic, benign. He paints Wilde as a generous, if foolish, man of letters surrounded by venal, blackmailing youths. He attacks the credibility of the witnesses, highlighting their history of petty crime and extortion. For a moment, it seems to work. The case is complex, the evidence circumstantial. Then, the Crown calls the hotel staff, chambermaids and housekeepers from the Savoy. Their testimony is simple, graphic, and devastating. They speak of stained sheets, of seeing young men in Wilde's bed, of strange, unsettling noises. This is no longer about poetry or philosophy. It is about the physical, prosecutable acts that the law terms gross indecency. The courtroom, for all its previous scandal, seems to hold its breath. This is the raw, ugly heart of the matter, stripped of all Wildane glitter. Throughout, Wilde sits in the dock, a figure of diminishing grandeur. He no longer tries to charm or dazzle. He is weary, deflated. His responses are often monosyllabic. The fire is gone. Only when Clarke reads aloud, in a final, desperate move, Wilde's beautiful, tortured letter to Bosie, the red rose-leaf lips letter, does emotion break through. Wilde bows his head and weeps. The jury retires. They deliberate for hours. The tension in the courthouse is unbearable. When they return, their faces are unreadable. The verdict: they cannot agree. A hung jury. The news is met with a roar from the gallery. Wilde is not acquitted. He is not convicted. He is in a terrible limbo. For a moment, there is a flicker of hope. Perhaps the government will drop the case. Perhaps he can still flee. But the machinery of the state is relentless. The Director of Public Prosecutions announces there will be a retrial. Bail, unthinkable before, is now set at an enormous sum. Wilde's few loyal friends and his long-suffering brother scramble to raise it. He is released from Holloway, a temporary reprieve. For 3 weeks, he is free, staying under an assumed name at a country house. Friends again beg him to take the night train to Dover, to cross to France where English law cannot reach him. He walks the gardens, a broken man in beautiful surroundings. He cannot decide. A fatal lassitude, a sense of doomed inevitability, has gripped him. He stays. The third trial begins on May 22, 1895. The atmosphere is now one of grim resolution. The prosecution has streamlined its case, focusing on a handful of the most credible witnesses. Sir Edward Clarke, fighting for his client's life, makes a staggering tactical move. To protect Wilde from the most severe charges, he pleads guilty to the counts relating to the younger, working-class men, arguing these were acts of temporary insanity brought on by his literary pursuits. It is a plea for mercy, an admission of guilt on some charges to avoid conviction on all. The strategy fails. The new judge, Mr. Justice Wills, is a stern, moralistic figure. The summing up is devastating. He instructs the jury that if they believe the witnesses, a verdict of guilty is their only course. The jury is out for only 2 hours. They file back in. The question is put to the foreman. Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty? Guilty. The word hangs in the still air. Justice Wills puts on the black cap, a small square of silk that transforms him from a man into an instrument of doom. His voice is cold with contempt. Oscar Wilde, he begins, the crime of which you have been convicted is so bad that one has to put stern restraint upon oneself to prevent oneself from describing in language which I would rather not use. And may I say nothing, my lord? The judge ignores him. The warders take his arms. He is led down from the dock, the stairs leading to the cells below. As he disappears from view, he is heard to mutter, a final, tragic echo of his wit, "It is worse than I feared." From the public gallery, a voice rings out, Bosie's father, the Marquess of Queensberry, triumphant, holding aloft a large card for the reporters to see. On it, he has written a single, gloating word, justified. The door to the cell at Pentonville Prison does not close. It seals. The sound is a tombstone settling. Oscar Wilde, now truly prisoner C3.3, is introduced to the meaning of hard labor. It is a system designed to break the body and crush the spirit. He is marched to the prison yard. The air is thick with the grit of pulverized stone and the sour smell of men pushed beyond endurance. The first task, picking oakum. He and other prisoners must climb, for 6 hours a day, in a grueling, pointless pantomime of ascent. The rhythm is set by a warder's whistle. Climb, climb, climb. The air is filled with the groan of the machine and the ragged gasps of men. Sweat soaks the coarse grey uniform. Muscles scream. Men faint, are revived with a bucket of water, and forced back on. It is not work. It is a form of torture disguised as industry. The smell of sweat, vomit, and despair becomes the atmosphere of his world. But the physical torment is only the surface. The real punishment is the isolation. For the first months, he is allowed no books, no writing materials, only a Bible. The silence is a weight. His mind, a palace of words and ideas, is left in a void. He is permitted one visitor and one letter every 3 months. When Constance comes, her face lined with grief and public shame, they are separated by a double screen of barred mesh and must speak through a small slot. They can barely see each other. The conversation is stilted, agonizing. She tells him his name has been removed from the playbills of his still-running hits in the West End. He is being erased. Then, a transfer to Wandsworth, and finally to Reading Jail. The journey is its own humiliation. Handcuffed and in prison dress, he is paraded on a mid-afternoon train. At Clapham Junction, he is made to stand on the central platform for half an hour, exposed to the jeering stares of the public. One man recognizes him, spits, and laughs. Wilde weeps. "For a year after that was done to me," he would later write, "I wept every day at the same hour and for the same space of time." At Reading, he is placed in a cell on the first floor, overlooking the prison yard. Here, he witnesses the full, grim theatre of Victorian punishment. He sees a young, half-witted soldier flogged for smashing a window, his screams echoing off the limestone walls. He sees a man slowly go insane in solitary confinement, his cries becoming animalistic in the night. And one morning, he witnesses the most haunting sight of all, the hanging of a young trooper, Charles Thomas Wooldridge, convicted of cutting his wife's throat. The sound of the trapdoor crashing open, the sudden, awful silence that follows, it sears into Wilde's soul. He will later immortalize it in his greatest poem, The Ballad of Reading Jail. That night the empty corridors were full of forms of fear, and up and down the iron town a stole feet we could not hear. Yet, in this abyss, a transformation begins. Through the kindness of a new, more humane governor and a sympathetic warder, he is eventually allowed books and writing materials. He pours his agony onto paper. He writes a long, passionate, self-lacerating letter to Bosie, a document that is part love letter, part philosophical treatise, and part indictment. It is his masterpiece of suffering, De Profundis, out of the depths. In it, he dissects his own life, his arrogance, his hedonism, his ruinous love for Bosie. "The gods had given me almost everything," he writes, "but I let myself be lured into long spells of senseless and sensual ease. I ended in horrible disgrace." He finds a strange, terrible clarity in his fall. He embraces his suffering as a form of radical humility. On May 18, 1897, the gates of Reading Jail swing open. Oscar Wilde steps out, a free man, but freedom is a foreign country. He is physically broken, his health ruined by years of hard labor and a prison diet-induced ear infection that will contribute to his death. He is financially bankrupt, his assets sold to pay his legal costs. He is socially obliterated. No respectable hotel in England will have him. His wife, Constance, though she visited him, has changed her and their son's surname to Holland to protect them. She provides him with a small allowance on the condition he never see Bosie again. They reunite for a few months in Italy, a pitiful echo of their former glamour. The relationship is strained, poisoned by recrimination and shared trauma. Wilde's friends cut off his funds, fearing Bosie's influence. The affair ends, this time for good, in bitterness. Wilde is truly alone. His final years are a sad, peripatetic exile in France and Italy. He lives in cheap hotels, surviving on allowances from friends and what he can earn from writing. He produces his last great work, The Ballad of Reading Jail, a searing indictment of the prison system and a cry of universal human suffering. It is published under his prison number, C3.3, and becomes a sensation, though it earns him little money. His health declines rapidly. The ear infection worsens, causing him constant pain. He dies in a small, shabby room at the Hotel d'Alsace in Paris on November 30th, 1900. He was 46. His deathbed is, in its way, a final piece of theatre. Reportedly, after receiving extreme unction from a Catholic priest, a conversion long contemplated, He looked at the garish wallpaper and uttered a last, perfect epigram. My wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go. He went. He was buried in a pauper's cemetery outside Paris. The fall of Oscar Wilde sent a seismic chill through artistic and homosexual circles in Britain and beyond. The trial crystallized vague societal fears into a brutal legal precedent. It emboldened blackmailers and terrified men into marriages of convenience, exile, or suicide. For decades, it stood as a stark warning. The love that dared not speak its name must remain forever mute, or face utter destruction. Yet, the trial also created a martyr. Wilde's wit, his suffering, and his writings, particularly De Profundis and the Ballad of Reading Gaol, transformed him from a disgraced libertine into a tragic symbol of the artist crushed by a hypocritical society. He became a patron saint of outsiders. His story forced a conversation about art, morality, and the right to privacy that simmered for generations. The debate he ignited continues. Was Wilde a predatory corrupter of youth, as the prosecution successfully painted him? Or was he a victim of a vindictive father, a rigid legal system, and a society that used him as a scapegoat for its own hidden vices? The truth, as always, lies in the shadows between. He was a complex man of great generosity and profound selfishness, a genius who courted his own destruction. His greatest crime, in the eyes of Victorian England, was not his homosexuality, widely practiced but discreetly hidden among all classes, but his flamboyant refusal to be discreet. He made the private public. He turned a sin into an aesthetic philosophy. For that, he had to be punished. His legacy is a paradox. The law that condemned him, the Labouchere Amendment, remained on the books in Britain until 1967. Yet, his name is now celebrated, his works taught in schools, his epigrams quoted by millions who know nothing of his trials. The man who was once the most infamous criminal in England is now one of its most cherished literary figures. The final image is not of the dandy at the Café Royal, nor the broken prisoner on the platform at Clapham Junction. It is of the words he wrote from his cell, a prophecy and an epitaph. Society, as we have constituted it, will have no place for me. But nature, whose sweet rains fall on unjust and just alike, will have clefts in the rocks where I may hide, and secret valleys in whose silence I may weep undisturbed. She will hang the night with stars so that I may walk abroad in the darkness without stumbling, and send the wind over my footprints so that none may track me to my hurt. She will cleanse me in great waters and with bitter herbs make me whole. But society never forgot his footprints. It followed him to the grave and beyond, ensuring that the trial of Oscar Wilde would echo as a warning, a tragedy, and an enduring question of where art ends and crime begins.